All right, welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. Gina. We thank you for joining us this morning. We're following breaking news this morning. The Vatican, of course, announced that Pope Francis has indeed passed away. He was 88 years old. This is after a long battle with double pneumonia. Apparently, though, news outlets reporting that was not the ultimate cause of his death. It had something to do with something more cerebral. I think we'll learn more as those details unfold. The selection process of a new pope usually takes anywhere from 15 to 20 days. This is after a pontiff's death. I'm sure we'll be discussing this in the days to come. Let's bring in John Yepp, CEO of Catholics for Catholics. John, welcome. John, I feel remiss, and I want to make up to our audience, especially Dave Ultramaga, who reminded me, as I was pointing out some of the things that confused and upset many, not just in the Catholic Church, but Christians at large and around the world, the non-condemnation of the deaths of Christians around the world in some situations out of this Pope. Also, of course, the liberalization of marriage under his opinion anyway. He doesn't change what the Catholic Church believes on those things, as I understand it. I'm not Catholic, but he doesn't change that. But also the lack of defense of life, especially in children unborn, babies unborn, was a problem. But there was the very important Catholic charities tantamount to treason on our border. I want to give you a chance to comment about that and to thank Dave Ultramaga for reminding me of that. I can't believe that I forgot that in my list of some of the problems that conservative Catholics anyway, true Catholics, biblical Catholics, I should say, because it really doesn't have to do with your politics. It did have to do with his politics around the world have had to say. Go ahead.
It's great to be here, Dr. Gina. I'm so glad you're covering this. This moment is historic, even just for if you're not Catholic. I mean, the Pope has been a figure of just great leadership, for bad or for worse, over the last 1,500 years, 2,000 years, right? So the fact that we have the Holy Father passing away is significant, right? You mentioned the laundry list of things that a Bible-believing Catholic Christian would take up with Pope Francis, and you're right. You're absolutely right on all those. I honestly would not want to be Pope Francis on his judgment day. And that's why, first and foremost, the man needs our prayers, because at the end of the day, the church is not led by a man, it's led by Christ, but men here on earth take up different roles in representing Christ on earth, right? So, he needs our prayers. This is it was a pontificate of which had a lot of scandals, truly, just from the obfuscation of doctrine, from away from biblical-based beliefs to just the Catholic charity thing you mentioned there. They had a little spat with Trump and J.D. Vance early on in the presidential administration. That caused great scandal here among many Christians. How could we, as a church, whether it was the Catholic charities, whether it was the Protestant groups who had money from the government, and the Biden used them to funnel this illegal invasion of our country. Horrible scandal, right? Meanwhile, the Vatican had some of the strictest laws of immigration in the world. So this is a moment really just to step back and realize, look, we're all going out the door, There's two things that are sure, death and taxes. We're all going to die. This man needs our prayers right now, and the world's on the verge of a very important conclave, which I'm sure you'll be getting into as the days go on.
Well, John, hey, David Brody here. Let's talk about that kind of going forward. You've talked about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you've talked about kind of reclaiming the term Catholic. What did you mean by that? Did you say that? And if you did, kind of explain that, because that kind of goes to where this conclave could go, which is to get the Catholic Church back to its traditional moral absolute underpinning, excuse me.
Absolutely. I spent 5 years in Rome. I was actually there the day that Pope Francis stood out there on the first time in the loggia. I remember that conclave very well, and I remember just the importance of having that father figure who truly represents Christ to the best of his abilities, and how we need that. And we have suffered, when we talk about reclaiming Catholic, it starts first and foremost with having men, whether that's Protestant pastors, whether you name it, who are going to stand up and not be afraid. We live in an age of truly cowards, either outright cowardice or complicity with working with leftist Marxist ideologies. And we saw that, unfortunately, with Pope Francis. So our job as lay faithful, our groups, Catholics for Catholics, we're about 2 years old, 2.5 years old. We're about being bold and bolstering those men and women on the front lines, whether they're pastors, clergy, whatever, they're going to willing to take a stand, right? We're very active during this past election, getting Trump elected. Unfortunately, we can't really chase down ballots like in a conclave to get the Pope that we want. We can pray, do our part, but ultimately that's what we're about. We need to reclaim Catholic because Christ needs our witness here.
John, Terrence Bates here. You said you can't chase down ballots for the Pope you want, so that raises the question for me, is there a Pope that you want? Do you have a front runner? Is there any particular candidate or cardinal that you're looking at? And then I guess part two of that question is, from a doctrinal standpoint, it seems that this is a crossroads, if you will, for the Catholic faith in terms of having a pope who can bring the church, if you will, back to its original doctrine.
Absolutely. You know, we take with us the solace just from Christ himself that upon this rock I will build my church, right? And the gates of hell will not prevail against it. I really 100% believe that, even as I lived through probably the worst pontificate in the history of the Catholic Church, which we just saw these past, 12 years. You know, that being said, whoever we ended up getting, even if he's worse than what we just had, it will not ultimately destroy the fundamental tenets of our faith. It's impossible. We have that guarantee from Christ himself. So who do I want to be Pope? You know, the Italians have a famous phrase, chi entra cardinale esce, chi entra papa esce cardinale. Whoever goes in as a cardinal leaves a cardinal, right? Whoever goes in as a pope leaves a cardinal. So you know, it's hard to say. I think that Cardinal Pietro Parolin, who's the Secretary of State right now, has a very good chance. I don't believe he would be the best for the interest of the church and Christianity. You know, from our perspective, we would love to see someone like Cardinal Raymond Burke, who's just been a stalwart of just orthodoxy and unity here. So, you know, but who knows? We'll see. As they also always say, the Holy Spirit always speaks during the conclave. The problem is we don't always listen. So it is up to men, partly in a sense, to choose who that man will be, and we're just hoping for the best.
This news just breaking out of Reuters. Davos gathering founder Klaus Schwab has quit as the World Economic Forum chair. It's a news-heavy day, and the Easter egg roll hasn't even gotten started yet. Your comments?
So Klaus Schwab, just what happened? He was named
quit.
I'm sorry.
As World Economic Forum chair. So it's an interesting.
So he quits.
Yeah, got it. Okay, that's interesting. I will say this, because those kind of groups do really have they have a role. They can't influence even the conclave, right? We've seen a different historical, unfortunately, but it's just a reality of being in the world. We had a group of cardinals who were known as the St. Gallen Mafia. This is not some conspiracy theory. These are from the words of the cardinals themselves, who gathered in St. Gallen, Switzerland, for over 10 years, starting in about 2005, to rally around what would end up being Pope Francis. So there are groups that meet, that kind of levy for power. We know that the Vatican, one of the most unfortunate things that happened during the pontificate of Pope Francis was the Sino-Vatican Accords. It was a secret deal between the Vatican and the CCP, yes, the CCP, where they basically sold out the underground church and ceded over to the Communist Party the ability to name bishops, something that has never been done in the history of the church, as well as there's rumors of a huge financial trade-off because of that. So, you know, these different groups like, you know, Klaus Schwab and World Economic Forum and things like that, we have to be watching out for that, you know, and I think that's the important of J.D. Vance showing up there yesterday to kind of reaffirm, you know, the presence of the United States and our relationship with the Vatican, right? So,
John,
I'm glad you brought that up.
We're completely out of time, but I just got to get this in really quick. I've got to ask you, is there a chink in the armor of globalists?
Yeah, the chink is our prayer. You know, like, we dodged a bullet July 13th, so that's their chink, you know, and that's not cliche. I mean, you have President Trump spouting out like he was more Catholic than the Pope yesterday or in his Easter message. So, you know, prayer's our weapon, and we're going to win with that.
John Yep, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Sean.